The NFL Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is presented by WynnBET. WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds, WynnBET has what you need to win. Sign up today, bet $100, and get a $100 free bet at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. We're also brought to you by the SGPN World Cup free roll. $250 in cash and a $250 gift card to the winner. Enter today exclusively on the SGPN app. Welcome, everyone, to the NFL Gambling Podcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Thursday, early afternoon here to discuss the afternoon games for NFL Week 11. Already Week 11. I feel like we say that same thing every single week. Already Week 9, already Week 10. It is Week 11 here, and joining me to break down the 4 games in the afternoon for NFL Week 11, including the Sunday Night Football game. You guys know him on the voice of the NBA Gambling Podcast, the Tennis Gambling Podcast, as well on the Fantasy Football Podcast, and of course here on the NFL Gambling Podcast. The man that does it both on and off the court for SGPN. It's Scott Studio Reichel. Scott, how you feeling today, my man?
Doing pretty well. Looking forward to getting into some of these Sunday games. Should be a lot of fun. But I know the NFL was pretty decent for me last week, from what I remember. I know I swept the total show. I think I went 0 on this show, so I guess it broke even in the end. But either way, yeah, looking forward to Week 11. Let's make some money.
Yeah, some pretty good matchups here, at least in the afternoon for Week 11. We got a good Sunday Night Football game. Chargers are there again. The Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chargers will be playing that Sunday night game. A couple of divisional matchups as well for the afternoon games. So why don't we just get right into it, Scott? First game, it's game of the year, Scott. Hold yourself for this one, all right? It's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders headed to the Mile High City to take on the Denver Broncos. This line currently over on WynnBET is sitting at, let's see here. The Broncos are a 3-point home favorite against the Las Vegas Raiders. Total is sitting at 41.5 for this game. Money line minus 150 for the Denver Broncos and plus 127 for the Las Vegas Raiders. Take a look at the injury report for both of these teams. Justin Simons is questionable for the Denver Broncos with a knee injury. He was a limited participant in practice on Wednesday. Keldon Hinton, wide receiver, questionable with a shoulder injury. He didn't practice on Wednesday. Jerry Jeudy is also questionable for the Denver Broncos. He didn't practice on Wednesday either. Looking at it for the Las Vegas Raiders, the road team here. Devontae Adams, limited in practice on Wednesday. Amir Abdullah was also a non-participant in practice on Wednesday with an illness. And other than that, pretty clean injury report for the Las Vegas Raiders. Scott, I mean, this Raiders team I think they're dead in the mud. I think their season is officially over after what transpired last week as they lost to the Indianapolis Colts. We did see Matt Ryan start that game, Jeff Saturday's first game as a professional NFL head coach. They went into Vegas with all the circumstances and all the things that went on with the Colts. They beat this Raiders team 25-20. And then for the Denver Broncos, they lost to the Tennessee Titans 17-10. It was funny. I saw a note on Twitter that said that if the Denver Broncos had scored at least 18 points in every single one of their games so far, they would be 8-1 on the season. But a lot of question marks for this team on the offensive side. But not the most exciting game here, Scott, but we do have the Denver Broncos as a 3-point home favorite here. What are you thinking about this game?
I think it's very, very tricky because the first meeting was actually high scoring. The first meeting was actually the one loss Denver would have had if they scored more than 18 points because they did, and they still lost the game. But either way, the Raiders are really, really bad. And I know that Davis came out publicly and said that they can't exactly get rid of McDaniels. Then reports came out that they can't afford to get rid of him, so they're kind of stuck with him. So I'm not sure what the reason is for him staying, but either way, apparently he's here to stay, and I'm sure Raiders fans are miserable about it. But I do think that this game could really go either way because both teams are really bad. And if you want a tank bowl for coaches, you have McDaniels against Hackett. That's a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing how that works itself out. But for this game, Denver's offense stinks. The Raiders' defense stinks. And Denver's defense is good. The Raiders' defense stinks. So it's pretty tough to call. I guess I'd lean Broncos, but there's no chance I'm going to bet the Broncos as a favorite. That just can't happen. So I'm just not going to put any money on it. I think I'm actually going to lean to the over in this game.
Okay.
First meeting was a bit high scoring, but I do think that the Raiders have enough weapons to create some big plays against Denver's defense. And Denver, they have some weapons. I'm not sure if the quarterback can throw anymore, but the Raiders' defense is so bad. They made Matt Ryan look good. He had a casual 30-something yard run, which was impressive, by the way. It might be the most athletic thing I've ever seen Matt Ryan do. But I am going to go with the over. I'm going to lean that way. I'm not betting anything in this game. If you do, from a side or total perspective, I hope you either have inside information or they have good donuts at the meeting, because you probably have to go to one. But either way, I'm going to go with the over in this one. I just think that from what I saw in the first meeting and from what I've seen with the Raiders, they can't stop anybody. And I do think the Raiders' offense is good enough to create some big plays. It's a low total. Give me some type of 23-20 game.
Yeah, I mean, I can't bet this game either. If you put a gun to my head and made me pick, I would probably go with the Denver Broncos in this game. Again, you mentioned like their defense has been one of the best in the entire National Football League so far this season. They just haven't. I mean, we've seen it throughout the season. This offense has just been a joke of what's been happening with this team, especially with the talent that they did have, especially to start the season. I know there was a lot of hype with Russell Wilson coming over to the Denver Broncos and, taking them to the next level, but it's been really Nathaniel Hackett, their head coach, that doesn't seem to know what he's doing half of the time in these games for the Denver Broncos. But it's crazy to think that, what I mentioned, if they have scored 18 or more points, they'd be sitting at 8-1. And like you mentioned there, that their one loss was against this Raiders team. In that game. Yeah, I'm kind of just looking back at that game. Russell Wilson had a pretty good game against the Raiders earlier this year. 17 of 25, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns.
It wasn't a dome, but still,
Yeah. Not sure if the weather is going to be a factor here in Denver, but if I had to go with a side here, it would be the Denver Broncos. Definitely not going to be playing this game. I mean, these are just two teams just headed in the wrong direction. A lot more question marks for both of these two teams than answers right now. So I would lean with the Denver Broncos here, minus the 3. As far as the total, yeah, I think there's a possibility that this can get over the total, which is currently sitting at 41.5. I mean, you mentioned it. Even though it was in a dome, they did end up scoring 55 points in that game. The Colts went in there, scored 25 last week with Matt Ryan as a quarterback. So I think that both teams could make plays here to get over this number, where it is a low total at 41.5, like you mentioned. So maybe in the rim of a 20, maybe like 23, 20.
That's the score I said. I said 23-20.
Yeah, 24-20, something like that. Yeah, so I think it could get over the total. Are you messing with any player props in this game, Scott, or should we just move on to the next game of the night?
The only props I'd be tempted by is longest field goal in this game. You have Carlson and McManus going at it, and it's in altitude, and there's really not much of a serious wind factor here, so I do think it should be pretty decent kicking conditions. But you're assuming it's going to be somewhere around 46.5, 47.5.
Yeah,
probably juice because it's in altitude. McManus is a huge leg, maybe not good enough from 60 in Seattle, but still good enough to hit it from 50 plus. And Carlson's made what, about 100 field goals in a row?
Something around that number.
Yeah. So I think the actual number is like 49. Like, he's just money in the bank. He's the best. I'd say he's arguably the most consistent player on the team. But I'm going to go with the over for longest field goal. We know both offenses can move it, but they occasionally struggle in the red zone or in plus territory. And they're going to attempt a lot of long kicks here. At least I could see it. So I do think if both kickers can reach from probably north of 58 in altitude, I'll take longest field goal over.
Okay. Yeah, I don't hate that, especially in altitude. We've seen McManus do it constantly at home games or in home games in Denver with altitude. And like you mentioned, Dylan Carlson has just been a monster for
Carlson is so damn good.
Yeah, for the Las Vegas Raiders as just being one of the more consistent kickers in the entire National Football League. All right, let's get over to the next game of the afternoon schedule here in NFL Week 11. Let's go over to maybe the matchup of the week. The Dallas Cowboys in Minnesota to take on the Minnesota Vikings. Currently, Dallas sitting at 6-3. Minnesota with a big victory last week in Buffalo. They are 8-1 and in the driver's seat for that NFC North division. Looking
It
at the
should
lines,
be over. You said driver's seat. I don't
yeah,
think there's anybody
it's
else on the track right now.
nah, yeah. It would take a monumental collapse for them to lose this division lead in the NFC North. But I'm currently seeing the Vikings over on WinBet as a slight home underdog here, Scott, plus 1.5 for the Minnesota Vikings. Total is sitting at 48 in this game. Money line minus 125 for the Dallas Cowboys and plus 105 for the Minnesota Vikings. Looking at the injury report for both of these teams, let's start here with the road team, the Dallas Cowboys. DeMarcus Lawrence is questionable. He did not participate in the Cowboys practice on Wednesday due to a foot injury. Ezekiel Elliott also was a limited participant on Wednesday with a knee issue. He is officially questionable. Anthony Barr, linebacker, is also questionable for the Dallas Cowboys. Anthony Brown, cornerback, sustained a concussion in last week's game against the Packers. He didn't return to that game. So he will definitely be in concussion protocol. Looking at the Minnesota Vikings here, not a lot of names on this injury report for them. I know Zadarius Smith last week. He's dealing with a knee contusion following the victory against the Buffalo Bills last week. Justin Jefferson is questionable, but I believe he will be a go in this game. Was an absolute monster last week. But he was
Is his back sore from carrying the team?
It's probably that's what it was. It says a toe injury officially on their report, but they should probably be put back. But look, last week, Scott, this was maybe the game of the year for sure, or not maybe, but probably is the game of the year between the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings. Buffalo Bills coughed it up in their own end zone. Josh Allen fumbled it, recovered in the end zone, went into overtime, and eventually they drove down the field, got a field goal to the Minnesota Vikings, and Patrick Peterson was able to pick off Josh Allen to seal the victory for the Minnesota Vikings. Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys coughed up a 2-touchdown lead against the Green Bay Packers. That game also went into overtime for the Dallas Cowboys. They dropped that game to the Green Bay Packers, 31-28. And now both teams coming off of overtime games meeting up in Minnesota here with Minnesota as a plus 1.5 home underdog in this game. Scott, what are you thinking about the spread here?
So the spread looks extremely trappy because blindly people are going to end up taking Minnesota because they're 8-1 and they are at home and they're off a big win against Buffalo. I'm going to take Dallas in this one. This line does seem extremely trappy, and the public will be all over Minnesota. I have to assume so. So I'll go contrarian in the spot. But Dallas, even though they lost the game against Green Bay, the issue mainly was the fact that they couldn't stop the run. And Cook had a very good game statistically against Buffalo. He really had an awful game with one very good carry. I believe he had a 73-yard touchdown. So
I'm sorry?
Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, you did last week, yeah.
So I'm saying his overall numbers were terrible. He just had one really good carry, which inflated all of his numbers. But it seems like Minnesota, despite winning the game, could definitely still be getting more from Kirk Cousins. And I do think that he has had moments where he's been clutch, other moments where you kind of want more from him. But I think Dallas ran into a pretty tough spot against Green Bay with the cold and the fact that they have several running backs they can rotate in and out. And I do think that even though Dallas lost the game, they were still up 14 going into the fourth quarter. They choked the game away, but they moved the ball pretty well. Lamb went nuts. Tony Pollard's still really good. I think I'm still going to take Dallas, though, because this line does seem extremely trappy to me.
Okay.
And I think the Cowboys can move the ball. Minnesota is one of the ultimate statistical paradoxes this season because they're 8-1, but you look at their overall numbers and everything, and they're basically mediocre. So I think Dallas is the more talented team.
Yeah. I was just looking at the numbers here, especially for Dallas's pass defense, which has been top in the league so far this year, right behind Denver, Philly. Dallas is actually number 3 as far as opponent yards per completion. Even their passing defense, opponent passing yards per game, Dallas is number 4 in that category at 182 per game. But I just feel like this might be an ultimate letdown spot here for the Minnesota Vikings just coming off of a huge, I mean, their biggest victory of the season by far, just what it took for them to get that victory done. And I know that the Dallas Cowboys are in a very tight NFC East race where, yes, the Eagles lost their first game on Monday Night Football. The Giants are sitting at 7-2. Dallas, I don't think, can afford to lose this game and drop back to 6-4 in that division. Then they'll be obviously fighting for a wild card spot. But I think there's more margin for error, like we talked about, for the Minnesota Vikings. But I just feel like this is not a good, but a big letdown spot for the Minnesota Vikings. And looking at their past defense and just looking at their numbers, Dallas has been pretty good. I think it's probably an advantage for the Dallas Cowboys if Zeke doesn't play in this game because Tony Pollard has just been so good for them. But like you mentioned, I think CeeDee Lamb should be able to run wild in that secondary. I don't think Patrick Peterson or any of those guys are going to be able to keep up with CeeDee Lamb. And
For
like
the
you
record,
mentioned,
Jefferson should still also have a good game. I'm not saying Dallas is
sure,
going to slow him down too, but
yeah,
you mentioned some of the numbers involving Dallas statistically speaking.
mhm,
Minnesota, I believe, is middle of the road in basically everything, and yet they're 8-1
yeah,
because every game's a one-score game, and they've won pretty much every one-score game. So
yeah,
I'm expecting a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout one way or another. Dallas should be pissed off after blowing that double-digit lead against Green Bay last week.
mhm.
And Minnesota, you said it could be a potential hangover for. I could see that, but I just think that based on the overall talent on each roster, Dallas is the better team. But pricing Dallas as roughly a 4.5 point favorite on a neutral really makes me believe that the odds makers are just daring you to take Minnesota. I'm not
Yeah.
going to do it. I'm going to go with Dallas.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Dallas here with you as well. Like I mentioned, I think for Minnesota, it's just a letdown spout. And especially their passing defense has just not been very good this season. Opponent yards per completion, they rank number 24. Opponent passing yards per game, I believe they were below 20 as well. Let me just double check that here. Minnesota, number 29, actually. They're giving up 263 yards through the air so far this season. So I'll go Dallas minus 1.5 here as well with you. Thoughts on the total here, Scott, at 48?
I like the over. I
Yeah.
don't see either team getting many stops here. I think you're going to end up seeing a spot where both teams should move the ball. It's in a dome, so weather's not a factor. Cook
Mhm.
could have a very good game, or you could end up seeing, of course, Jefferson go nuts, and you could see Lamb have a good game or Pollard as well. I just like the weapons for both teams. And Dallas
Yeah.
couldn't stop the run all season long. They got exploited last week for it.
Mhm.
I think that there is a path for both teams to score. But the way that I kind of see it, I just think you're going to see points in this game. This game just screams to me like 28, maybe 27, 24, something in the
Mhm.
50s. I'm going with the over.
Yeah, Dallas is 3-1 to the over in road games so far this season. Minnesota at home, they are 3-1 as well to the over so far this season. Player props, I know a lot of books have not released them yet, but anything that you may be looking at, I know like CeeDee Lamb should have a big game here. Justin Jefferson, I think those guys will probably shine in this game. But anything in particular you're looking at?
I was looking at longest reception for either guy, probably Jefferson. I
Yeah,
think that either one is a shot for 100. Jefferson, of course, has a better chance, but his yardage are going to be a lot higher than Lamb's for the props.
yeah.
Maybe Dalvin Cook touchdown if you want to make a
Okay.
case for Minnesota being able to run the ball pretty well. I'm trying to think of any other props that I like. If you want to go for a sack prop, maybe Parsons. I think he could potentially get after Cousins at least once. I'm not sure what the odds are going to be on that, which is a bit problematic because he's so good that it
Yeah.
might not be worth it based on how low the odds actually are, which is a
Yeah.
bit of a problem. Do you have any thoughts on Dak interception?
Hmm. Uh
Or maybe Cousins interception or either or? Because I could see
I would
either of
probably
them
go
making a stupid
Cousins.
pass. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have more faith in Cousins making that stupid pass than Dak
Dak?
because I don't know. I think this might be the game where like Kirk Cousins kind of like comes back down to earth, and like he's throwing more interceptions so far this season than he did last year, despite them being eight
Yeah.
and one.
And for the record,
Um,
was Cousins good last week? I mean, he led them on a couple
no,
comeback drives, but there was a 4th and 18 miracle Hail Mary one-hander, which is the top 3 catch of all time by Jefferson, and he failed the QB sneak. And they ended up having a fumble recovery touchdown. Like, I didn't think Cousins was good for a decent portion of that game. Now, he led his team down the field, but there were a lot of really fluky plays in that game. And I do think that Cousins might
So
be in line for an implosion.
yeah, it took that miraculous catch by Justin Jefferson for them to, get in the in there. I think Adam Thielen in there as well. Who saw the Twitter? Looked like he has the eyes closed and just kind of threw the ball down the field, hoping somebody would catch for him. I think it was the Thielen catch, but yeah, 53. But that game, when it's come back, he still options against the Buffalo Bills, and he got sacked. I do like a sack prop that team sack up. Always, I think that they should the pressure with Kirk Cousins back there. His Q 0.5, so not much to. Again, I think that this week, the week where he kind of comes back, or we see of vision, passes that just are make us scratch our head is what I'm trying to say for this game. Anything else for this game, Scott? Before we get over to the next one.
For me, no, not really. I think it's going to be a spot where I just think it's going to be a nail biter. One bad decision might end up having an issue, or might result in the game potentially going one way or another. But Dallas being favored does seem extremely, let's just say, trappy, and I'm not going to fall for it. So I'll take Dallas. And plus, Cousins took some really bad sacks last week. Keep an eye on that, either in the red zone or in 3rd and long. That's why they were in a 4th and 18 spot in the first place. Cousins seems like he has virtually no pocket presence at all, and I do think Dallas's defensive line could get after him.
He panics. He panics a lot.
Yeah.
So Sharky's asking a question: is this Vikings team capable of winning a Super Bowl?
I think they'll be happy if they win a playoff game. And I'm not trying to sound
like they'll be happy winning the division.
Yeah, I'm going to say I know that this team is right now in possession of the 2C in the NFC because Philly owns the tiebreaker. But the Vikings are one of those classic teams that, the way I look at them, their record is really good, but you watch them play on a game-in, game-out basis, they really leave a lot to be desired. And I guess this year is not that bad because you really don't have many elite teams in the NFL. I kind of feel the same way about the Eagles. You look at their schedule and you go, well, I think this team could be better than their overall record suggests. But then again, I do think the NFC is very weak. The AFC should be favored by a ton in the Super Bowl, no matter which team comes out of it. But Minnesota, no. You look at their advanced numbers, all the one-score games. They've been very fortunate to win a lot of these one-score games.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to win. I'll tell you what, if Minnesota goes one and done, I would not be shocked, and I will probably bet the underdog in their first playoff game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they'll be happy winning the division. Honestly,
I'm just saying, I don't think Cousins is good enough to win. What
on the road in the prime time.
Yeah.
No.
Well, they'll be home.
For
the first round at least, but I don't know if I really care. I watch Minnesota play, and they seem like a somewhat above-average team that gets a decent amount of breaks in close games. That's really my main view of this team. Do you disagree? You feel the same way?
I think that, it's really the narrative with Kirk Cousins, like prime time Kirk Cousins. Like, imagine getting to the playoffs. Yeah, they'll get that first home game just because, their record is they'll win this division. We know that. But if they win that first game, you mentioned it. Yeah, I agree with you that they will probably, if not, I don't care if they're favored or if they're going to be underdogs. I think that you just kind of have to bet against them.
They might play Dallas.
Kirk Cousins.
Like, they might play Dallas in the first round. They might play against maybe Seattle,
Tampa, maybe.
I think Tampa's going to win the division. So
that's right. Yeah.
I'm assuming Minnesota's going to get a wild card opponent, but
right. Yeah, you're right.
I would maybe pick Minnesota against the Giants ? But against Dallas or against Seattle, I'm probably going to take Dallas or Seattle.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think it's just we don't trust Kirk Cousins. I think that's just what it is, man. All right. Before we get over to the next game, let me tell you guys where you can get on all these player props and on betting lines. That's over at Win. Ready to win money and boost your odds? WinBet is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. We're bringing the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas to online sports betting and casino play. Exclusive rewards are right at your fingertips with Wynn Rewards on WynnBet. Be on the lookout for WynnBet Win Hour each Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. During WynnBet Win Hour, marquee games of the week will have better odds on WynnBet, giving you a larger payout opportunity. Great promos, odds, and payouts are happening right now at WynnBet. From boosted same-game parlays, live in-game odds on every major sport, WynnBet has what you need to win. Ready to play? Sign up today to receive a special offer. Bet 100 and win 100. There's so much to choose from, and all you have to do is over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBet so they know that we sent you. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET to claim your free bet today. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 years or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBet is available. If you're someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right, Scott, let's get over to the next game of the afternoon on NFL Week 10, and that's going to be a AFC North matchup. It's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals, who currently sit at 5-4, taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are sitting at 3-6. Looking at the lines for this game currently over on WynnBet, the Cincinnati Bengals are a 4-point road favorite here. Total is sitting at 41. Money line minus 190 for the Cincinnati Bengals and plus 160 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looking at the injury report, let's start here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Currently seeing Chris Evans, running back, questionable for them. He was a limited participant. Jamar Chase has been ruled out. I know he wasn't put on the IR, but he wasn't present for practice on Wednesday. Other than that, pretty clean injury report for the Cincinnati Bengals. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we saw the return of TJ Watt last week, their best defensive player, if not the best defensive player of all of football. A lot of questionable tags for this team. Kevin Dotson, questionable. Mika Fitzpatrick is also questionable. Weatherspoon, cornerback, questionable. Bush, linebacker, questionable. Trent Scott, offensive tackle, questionable. And Marcus Allen, linebacker, questionable. Looking at this division here, Scott, it pretty much looks like it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals, fighting for this AFC North division. Currently seeing the Baltimore Ravens are the 6-3 record, having a one-game lead over the Cincinnati Bengals here. But let's start with the side here. The Cincinnati Bengals as a 4-point road favorite here, Scott, against the Steelers. What are you thinking about this game?
By the way, just to quickly backtrack for a second to the Vikings game, I did pull up the DVOA stats. I thought Minnesota was mediocre. Dallas ranks 4th. Not exactly surprising. Minnesota with one loss, 17th. So according to DVOA, they are actually just a mediocre football team that's gotten pretty fortunate in a bunch of close games. So,
yeah.
Just going to throw that out there. I knew that they were mediocre. I wanted the exact number. They're 17th. But for this matchup, I like Cincinnati a lot more 3.5, where it was basically yesterday. But I am going to pick Cincinnati in this one. It's a great spot. Anytime you have a division matchup and one team's coming off the bye and the other team is not, I tend to lean to the team with the bye. But Cincinnati also should have beaten Pittsburgh the first time around. It was the week 1 game, the crazy one that almost ended in a tie. But you're looking at the spot where Cincinnati allowed less than 270 total yards of offense. They lost the turnover battle 5-0. And they were still an extra point with about no time left away from winning the game. And yet they lost in overtime because the kick got blocked. And then they lost in overtime on a couple of missed field goals there by McPherson. But the point is Cincinnati is the much better team. I know Chase is out, but I don't think it's close. Pittsburgh beat New Orleans last week. I had their defense in fantasy. Congratulations. You beat Andy Dalton at home. I'm proud of you. But I don't think Pittsburgh's any good. And you go through Pittsburgh's numbers, they have scored more than 20 points in regulation in 0 of their games this season. 0.
You're right.
They can't score. Yeah. So I think Cincinnati, even without Chase, they still have Higgins. They still have Mixon. They have Burrow, who's infinitely better than Kenny Pickett. I think Cincinnati gets revenge here. I'm sure this game might have been circled on the calendar a little bit after week 1 was really just a loss that should never have happened based on how badly they outplayed Pittsburgh on the stat sheet.
Yeah.
And it's a division game. They're going to be motivated for it. Pittsburgh's going to be motivated too. I just don't think they're any good. I think Pittsburgh's a really bad football team. Give me to Cincinnati. I think they're the much better team. And off a bye, I got to like the scheduling spot.
Yeah, especially with a team coming off of the bye, right? I think that's something that I really do like for the Cincinnati Bengals. And like you mentioned, I think this team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they're going to win games, it's going to be ugly wins, right? Like it's going to be those 20-10, 16-10 type of games that they've been
Just
involved in.
parlay the under if you want Pittsburgh. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And I just think that this is going to be a game where Cincinnati, like you mentioned, coming off of the bye, they're going to be, they know they have to win this game to be in contention for that division, right? Because, right, we mentioned it's pretty much a two-horse race between the Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Yes,
And
they don't
Baltimore
have.
won the first head-to-head meeting. So.
Yeah, and they don't have Jamar Chase, which is fine, but I think this is going to be a game where we see the other guys, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, they're going to have to be obviously involved without having Chase. This is a Joe Mixon game. I think that Joe Mixon should be able to, despite going up against a pretty good front with TJ Watt being back for the Cincinnati Bengals, I just think that this is a good spot here for the Cincinnati Bengals. I agree with you. So, seems a little chalky. At least I'm on the chalkier side this week, at least in these afternoon games here, Scott.
Is it chalky though? Because I mean, fading Pittsburgh and Hines in November, I think people might make a case that this is a decent dog spot. I just disagree. But in division dogs have been pretty good this season. Cold weather, people are probably going to like the under anyway.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be as popular as you think.
I think the Pittsburgh Steelers
they're bad, but they won last week. So
yeah. They're probably going to be the underdog of the week.
Well, I think it would be Minnesota if that counts.
Yeah, Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. I think Minnesota 1, and then probably the Steelers number 2 because we see the stats all over Twitter about Mike Tomlin and how he is as an underdog and things like that. So
I think you have an argument maybe the Bears, but the Bears have lost every game that Justin Fields has been great in. So yeah. I'd assume it would be the Steelers 2 or 3, if I had to guess.
Definitely more. Yeah. Total, I think we're leaning under in this game.
Yeah, because I'm going to take an over with the Steelers. Like, no, they can't move the ball. And Cincinnati, no, I'm not taking an over with the Steelers. I mean, you're looking at how Cincinnati can win this game. If I told you Pittsburgh scores, I was going to say, you go through the fluky week 1 game. I didn't even mention Pittsburgh got a pick 6, which resulted in 7 free points. So offensively in regulation, they scored 13 points against Cincinnati in week 1. They can't score. They scored 20 against New Orleans. They had the ball a decent amount. New Orleans, we know, is not very good. I think Cincinnati, with an extra week of prep, I mean, I don't know if you need to prep for one of the worst offenses in the league anyway, but, have fun with it. I'm on the under. Pittsburgh, I think, is going to score like 13 points. And I think that you're going to end up seeing Cincinnati win this game 20-13, something like that. And I think it's going to be close, maybe a one-possession game there, but it's a rock fight anytime the Steelers are involved. And Tomlin in plus territory, 4th and 5 at the 40, they're punting. They're just punting. They're going to be they're still living back in like 2004. So I'm going with the under.
Yeah. All right. Any player props we may be looking at in this game?
I'm trying to think of what exactly I like here. I'm assuming Higgins is going to play well because he's going to have to. So I'd probably look for the over in Higgins.
Yeah.
Mixon could play well. Maybe I'd look for touchdown. I'm not sure about the yards. I know Najee Harris had a really good game last week. Do you think that was fluky, or do you think he actually might have found something? Because he's been terrible for the entire year.
I think I would go more with the fluky side than actually him having a great game, because that Saints defense
bad,
right? And if I'm trying to look up how he's done against the Bengals in his career, that
was the story of the Monday night game also against the Ravens, where Dennis Allen said in the post game we couldn't stop the run, and Baltimore just ran it down their throats the entire second half. So I know the Saints' run defense isn't great.
Yeah, so Najee Harris, 3 career games against the Cincinnati Bengals, 10 attempts. So the matchup earlier this season, 10 attempts, 23 yards. Last season, 2 games, 8 carries, 23 yards, and then 14 for 40.
I'm on the under for his rushing yards. I think it's a good buy low spot. Some people are going to think, probably because of their fantasy leagues, Najee Harris, decent buy low spot. No, I don't think so. I think it's actually a very nice, in like stock market or in crypto terms, I guess, it's a dead cat bounce where it just goes up briefly just by some type of fluke and then it goes right back down. I don't think Najee Harris is that good right now, and it's not really his fault because the offensive line's terrible.
Yeah.
But Cincinnati has shut him down repeatedly, and I think this number will be inflated because of what happened last week.
Mhm.
I also think Pittsburgh's going to be losing, so they might have to abandon the run. But I
Yeah.
don't mind fading Najee Harris.
Yeah. I want to see what Kenny Pickett's interception prop will be. I know it'll probably be like half at minus 180, maybe
That's why I didn't
minus
mention it.
200.
I'd probably look at Burrow interception, though. I mean, he
Okay.
threw 4 of them in week 1. You just
Yeah.
need one pass to go badly. I don't mind that prop as well for Burrow.
Yeah. Let me see how he's done against the Steelers. Give me 1 second here. So Joe Burrow has thrown at least one interception in 3 out of the 4 games that he has faced the Steelers.
I don't know what the odds are going to be. I'll assume it's going to be around minus 110. Maybe even
Yeah,
plus
I would
money
think so.
potentially. I
Yeah.
don't know. But
Yeah. And he hasn't had a great great career passing yards as well. I know week 1 this year he had 338. But prior to that, 190, 172, and 213 for
yeah,
Joe Burrow against the Steelers.
but I'd look for interception there. I think that he
Yeah,
could throw one.
sure. He also got sacked 7 times in their first game.
Yeah.
This season at least. All right. Anything else for this game, Scott, before we get into the Sunday night football game?
You mentioned the sacks. I
Yeah.
like the over in sacks. I'm not sure what TJ Watt's odds are going to be. Maybe pivot to another defensive lineman. If Hendrickson's going to play for Cincinnati, I don't mind him to get a sack. I'm assuming he
Okay.
will play because
Yeah.
they're off the bye. But very underrated pass rusher. I don't mind him getting after Pickett at least once.
All right. Let's get over to the Sunday night football game. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs headed to LA to take on the Los Angeles Chargers.
Are the
This
Chargers the
is,
first team like that I could remember to have back-to-back Sunday night football games? I don't remember ever seeing a team be on Sunday night back-to-back weeks.
yeah, I don't remember that. Maybe the
Is that a thing?
Bills. I would only think
It's not even
like,
Monday night though. It's back-to-back Sunday night. Like that's weird.
yeah, the only 2 teams that may come to mind is like maybe Kansas City's done it in the Patrick Mahomes era,
Patriots because
and
they
maybe
won
yeah,
all
that
the
was the other
time.
team I was gonna
Yeah.
say, Brady and the Patriots, but yeah, you often don't see that. Yeah, so Kansas City Chiefs 7-2 on the season so far. The 3-1 on the road. Los Angeles Chargers, like you mentioned last week, were on the primetime game versus the 49ers. They're sitting at 5-4 with a record of 2-2. Let's start with the opening line, or sorry, for the line for this game. I'm currently seeing over on WinBet that the Kansas City Chiefs are
It's around 6, 5.5 or 6.
screen goes blank. Come on. Let's see here. I think it was 6 when I saw it.
Yeah.
I'll just wait for
I
the
think it's
page.
6 in most spots at this point.
Yeah, 5.5 over on WinBet.
Okay.
Yeah, 6, 5.5, 6. But definitely shop around for the best number. Total is sitting at 51 in this game here, Scott. Minus 250 on the money line for the road favorites, Kansas City Chiefs here, and plus 205 for the Los Angeles Chargers. Looking at the injury report for both of these teams, let's start here with the road team, the Kansas City Chiefs. Currently seeing Nico Hardman, wide receiver, questionable. He has an abdomen issue. He didn't practice on Thursday. Juju Smith-Schuster is in concussion protocol. He is officially questionable. I don't think he'll be able to go in this game, but he didn't practice on Thursday either.
I don't think he's going to play. He was comatose on the field. Like I think he's out for this week.
Yeah.
I mean,
MVS also questionable. He did practice on Thursday, but he's officially listed with an illness. Jerick McKinnon, running back, dealing with a hamstring / shoulder issue. He was a limited participant on Wednesday. Other than that,
I forgot he was still on the team.
Yeah.
Kansas City just throws in a bunch of running backs. I don't know if it really matters.
And then for the Chargers here, flip a coin if you think Keenan Allen is going to be playing in this game or not.
I think he was a limited participant, though. I'm assuming he will play in this game.
Yeah. But even I think he was practicing last week too, and he didn't end up playing, right? Or
yeah, he might. It's a big division game. I know that the big news was Mike Williams, who returned to practice. So I'm assuming he'll be active.
Yeah, Mike Williams back at practice, dealing with an ankle issue, limited participant. Gerald Everett, groin issue, logged a limited practice on Wednesday. DeAndre Carter, ribs limited. Christian Covington was put on the IR, and that is pretty much it here, Scott. All right, so division matchup here between the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Chargers, with the Chiefs. This is carded -6 here for them on the road here against the Chargers. What are you thinking about this game?
Even though the Chargers covered against the Niners, I was not impressed. In fact, the entire second half was what I thought would happen for the entire game. We spent all of last episode talking about how the Chargers are probably the worst 5-3 team in the league because they haven't beaten anybody.
Mhm.
And what do you know? They haven't beaten anybody still because they lost to the Niners. They're not very good. And I do think that getting Williams and Allen back are huge additions if
Of course,
if
yeah.
they're going to end up playing because
Yeah.
Herbert was throwing to nobody, but they're
Yeah.
still missing a bunch of guys. Joey Bosa is still hurt. J.C. Jackson's still out for the year. Still missing Slater on the offensive line. So they're definitely not a team that I really like that much. Now, the first game was competitive. The Chargers probably could have potentially won the game, and then they threw that 100-yard pick six, and that basically ended the game. Score was a bit fluky at the end, though, because Herbert had that 4th-and-goal miracle backdoor cover touchdown pass with like 20 seconds left to make the game close. But I think the Chiefs are the better team. I don't think it's very close. I do think that even though the Chargers are a team that typically have given the Chiefs some problems in recent years, I really just don't think this team is very good. And I think the Chiefs are really good. It seemed, though, the Chiefs last week had a classic performance from about 2 years ago
Mhm.
where they won the game. They could have potentially won by 20. And then the fourth quarter came around and it looked like they didn't care. It seemed like they really just stopped caring about Jacksonville. They let the Jaguars hang around a bit. They were up, what, like 20 in that game, 17 in that game, and it actually became a little bit close in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So that's my only concern
Mhm.
is if the Chiefs just let the Chargers hang around. But I think I'm just going to take Kansas City. I think that they're still the much more talented team. I think that Mahomes will play well. The only concern I guess I have for the Chiefs is with the injuries to Juju and to Hardman. You're looking at Derwin James guarding Kelsey,
Yeah.
and Derwin James is probably the best defensive player, or I'll rephrase it. He's probably the best matchup against Kelsey compared to anybody else in the league. He does a great job at shutting down Kelsey compared to every other player that's ever had to guard Kelsey.
Mhm.
That's a bit of my
Mhm.
concern is if Derwin can really match up well like he has in the past against Kelsey. But I'm gonna pick Kansas City. Great teams find ways to win games, and the Chargers find ways to lose games, especially with Mahomes being on the other side. You know Staley's going to go for it on every fourth down, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming they might come back to bite them at some point. I'll take the Chiefs.
Do we see with the injuries? Let's just say if two out of those three guys are not able, we know Juju, I think for sure is not going to be playing in this
Juju's
game.
not
Let's
going to
say,
play. It would be a miracle if he played. I
yeah,
don't think
and
he's going to.
even if let's say MBS or Miko Hardman are out, do we just see the Kansas City Chiefs just come down and running the football here just because the Chargers' run defense has just been so bad this year?
Are you making a case for a Pacheco like 60 plus alternative yards or something? Because I don't mind it.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I know they came out and said that they're going to try to find some more touches, quote unquote, for CEH, but he hasn't been very heavily involved in the offense for the Kansas City Chiefs, with a shake for them. So this and so. I mean, look, if they're compromised at that wide receiver position, they probably just want to attack it on the ground here. I know you still have Magician Mahomes back there, and they'll still able to find ways to throw the ball effectively. But I think this might be a game where we see more of the Chiefs' offense relying on running the football, just because the Chargers' rush defense has just been so bad over the course of the season, but in particular over the last couple weeks for this Chargers team. So I think that this is a game for God,
I
man.
like the under, by the way, for the record.
Okay.
I know with
Man.
Williams and Keenan being back, it might be tricky, but as you said before, I do think the Chiefs might play a bit more ball control football against this awful ground defense. And also, I
Yeah.
don't think the Chiefs' rushing defense is that much better. The Chiefs have decent numbers because they can get thrown on, but if you watch them against decent running backs, Singletary torched them for a half, Jacobs torched them for the entire game, basically. I do think there's a path for Eckler to have a very good game.
Yeah.
So I am going to lean to the under. I think
Okay.
you will see a very classical fourth quarter by the Chiefs. Couple 7-minute drives to just drain the entire clock from the other team. I could see
Yeah.
that happening. So I'm going to go with the under.
I'm gonna go with the contrarian play. This is my contrarian play of the week. I'm just gonna go with the Chargers on the spread here.
Okay.
I think I
There's a
think
path.
this, yeah, there's a path for it, right? And again, they got the fortunate cover in the game earlier this season where they only lost what by 3 points in that game. But
You could argue it was a trade-off because they were about to score a touchdown. They threw a pick
Sure.
six, so they should have
Yeah.
covered anyway.
Yeah. So I think there probably are some sixes out there for this Chargers and Chiefs game. Maybe wait closer to game time because maybe the public comes in on the Chiefs just because they see Patrick Mahomes in prime time here.
Mhm.
And what you just mentioned there is kind of what that tipping scale is for me, that getting Keenan Allen and Mike Williams back this week. At least you'll get one. At least one of the two guys is going to be on the field for for Justin Herbert to throw to. I know last week against the Niners, it was pretty much DeAndre Carter and Josh Palmer and hoping to get something out of Austin Eckler going up against that run defense. But I think that, you mentioned that Kansas City's rush defense has not been very good this season. And I think that getting at least some of those weapons back and Eckler having a better game this week, I think they can keep this game close. I still do think the Chiefs win this game, maybe by like 4 points, 24-20, something in that range. But I think they do get the cover here due to the Chargers. So how about my contrarian play of the week here for this game? We did discuss some player props here, maybe some Austin Eckler or Pacheco props here. Scott, anything else that kind of sticks out to you for player props?
If assuming Mike Williams plays, are you blindly taking his over because he owns the Chiefs?
You pretty much have to at that point, right?
Just go through the numbers yourself. I mean, he basically walks into 100 yards every time they play.
Yeah, let me just for reference here, let me just pull it up for our listeners. So Mike Williams, last game earlier this season, 8 receptions, 113 yards. Last season, he had one game where he had 3 receptions, 49 yards. Okay, but prior to that, 7 receptions, 122, 6 receptions, 108. So, yeah, maybe if you want to go 100 yards, buy it up for Mike Williams, or definitely take the over on his receiving yards just for
Longest
Justin
reception.
Herbert. Yeah, longest reception, something like that as well. Anything else, Scott, for this game?
No, not really. I do like the under. I think that's probably my favorite play on this game. It's going to seem contrarian because you have Mahomes versus Herbert. That's going to be my contrarian play for this game. I like the under. I think you'll see a lower scoring game, kind of like what we saw in Arrowhead a couple months ago.
It makes sense to like prime time, and again, public loves betting the over in these prime time games, and we've seen throughout the season where a lot of the games have been going under, especially in prime time.
And the Chiefs might be down a couple receivers. I mean, there's a path there.
Yeah. Another question from Sharky here. Do you guys think the Chiefs' continued success is a condemnation of Tyreek Hill, or is Miami's success proof of his value?
It's a little bit of both because the Chiefs can have proven. I mean, we saw with Brady in the past, and yes, I know that Mahomes is more talented than Brady will ever be, just based on overall God-gifted ability. But the point is, we know Brady's thrown touchdown passes to 700 different players. Like they were able to just throw in a bunch of random guys, a bunch of backups, and the quarterback was able to really just elevate everyone else on the team. And I think that's what Mahomes has done. I think Mahomes is that good. You can throw anybody out there, maybe even one or two of us, and we might be able to catch a touchdown pass. But Tyreek Hill is an insane talent. Yeah. And I do think that Hill's absence will be more noticeable in the playoffs. And that's also why I do like the under in this game against the Chargers. It's because Hill really takes away all of the big playability that the Chiefs have. You look at their scoring drives, they're very, very methodical. A lot of them are 12 plays, 75 yards, takes up a ton of clock.
Yeah.
They don't have the same quick strike ability that I think made that offense so great when Hill was there. And I do think at some point in the playoffs, even with cold weather, that might come back to bite them. Because if you need at least 9 plays every drive to go 70-plus yards for a touchdown, at some point you'll get a holding penalty, maybe a sack, some type of, drop pass that might drop you behind in the chains. I think the Chiefs are going to be in a bit of trouble in the playoffs. I think they'll end up, of course, making a deep run because they got Mahomes. But I think you'd agree if you watch this team play, it's really a grind for them to score all the time because they generate like 6 yards of play instead of getting the automatic bailout 75-yard touchdown from Hill that they used to get.
Yeah, and I think that's what's we'll really find out in the playoffs, what you mentioned, just because.
And they can't run the ball in the cold. So
yeah, Tyreek Hill has just been was so good for this team. Where if they needed a big play, even running a small gadget play Like if you needed to pick up that fourth down to seal the game, they were looking for Tyreek Hill in those type of situations
And we
just
saw it
because
against
he could.
Buffalo in the playoffs. They had the
Yeah,
slant pass for 5 yards that he took 70-something yards for a touchdown, which gave them the lead temporarily. Then, of course, Buffalo scored, and you had that whole 13-second thing. But still,
yeah,
it's the ability to just hit defenses with a ton of weapons and a ton of unpredictability. And I'm not saying that the Chiefs are going to lose in the playoffs because of it,
yeah,
but I do think their offense is pretty predictable. Mahomes is just so good it doesn't matter.
yeah.
But you watch this team play, it's a lot of underneath stuff, and they
Mhm.
really don't have the same firepower that they had previously based on the ability to score from anywhere on the field.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we saw a lot of times where we saw Tyreek Hill just bail them out. We saw it in the Super Bowl. We had that miraculous catch where he's able to find space against the San Francisco 49ers. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of respond. Jake pointing out might be Kadarius Toney season for the Kansas City Chiefs. He had a pretty good game last week
That
for
made
the
me laugh
Chiefs.
so hard, by the way, when he ended up playing after basically sitting the entire season out with the Giants. That kind of made me laugh.
Yeah,
But
what last week he had 2 carries for 33 yards for the Chiefs, and then he also had I know he had 4 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. So yeah, maybe they utilize him this week
they
if
have to,
one
right? I
of
mean, Juju's out.
yeah, the Juju's out for sure. Then if let's say MVS or what was the other Mecole Hardman's not able to
Yeah.
go, then you're gonna really have to
But
utilize
Tony in
Kadarius Toney.
college or even with the Giants, he can line up in the slot. I think
Yeah.
he's a natural replacement for Juju in this game. I think he might have a
Mhm.
big game.
Yeah, 90 all-purpose yards last week for Kadarius Toney. Anything else for this game, Scott? Before we get into our lock and dog,
No, not really. I just think it's going to be a pretty entertaining game.
yeah. All right. Before we get into our lock and dog, the World Cup is starting in just a short amount of time here over this next weekend, and we're hosting a free roll contest for the World Cup. Winner gets $250 in cash and a $250 gift card to the winner. And you can only enter exclusively on the SGPN app. Make sure to check out all the content as well over on sportsgamblingpodcast.com. We do also have the World Cup Gambling Podcast hosted by Malcolm and his mate there. So make sure to check out the World Cup Gambling Podcast. And again, get into that World Cup free roll contest, $250 in cash to the winner and $250 gift card to the winner, but exclusively on the SGPN app. And we're also brought to you by the SGPN merch store. It's holiday season, and get your shopping done early over at the SGPN merch store. A lot of nice stuff has been put out on that SGPN merch. So shout out to Jake, man. He's just done an incredible job with the SGPN merch store. Definitely go in there and check it out. The nice Christmas sweater in there. If you don't want any of the Christmas stuff, there's some great college football team shirts, NFL, NBA, you name it. Just make sure get in there, check it out over on the SGPN merch store. But the bosses are in a giving mood. They're also giving you off 10% up until Thanksgiving Day by using promo code Dallas Sucks. So make sure to get over to our SGPN merch store by going to store.sportsgamblingpodcast.com and make sure to use promo code Dallas Sucks for 10% off up until Thanksgiving Day. Whew. All right, Scott, let's close it out strong here, my man. Let's get into our lock and dog for this NFL Week 11 afternoon game schedule. I'll let you lead it off here, buddy. What's your lock and dog for the games?
So for my lock, I'm torn between the Bengals and the under in the Sunday Night Football game. I think I'm going to go with the. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to go with the under in that Sunday night game. I really just think you're going to see a defensive struggle, at least more than what people think. I know it's in a dome and all. I'm not sure which receivers are even going to play for either team in this spot, which is a problem. But historically speaking, Derwin's done a very good job on Kelsey. And as I just mentioned before, without Hill on the team, the Chiefs really take a lot of time off the clock on their scoring drives.
Yeah.
So I do think you could end up seeing a couple of really long drives, and we know the Chiefs are aggressive on fourth down with Andy Reid. Is it possible you might get a 7-minute drive that results in a 4th-and-1 incompletion at the 5-yard line? No, it wouldn't surprise me. I think that's definitely a way that this game could go. But the Chargers' offensive line, not great, especially with Slater being out. I do think the Chiefs' defense is decent enough to give Herbert some problems, but it's mostly just based on the fact that both coaches are overly aggressive, which could come back to bite you. But I think that both teams can run the ball in this game, and I think that you'll end up seeing a lot of running clock because of it. Now, blindly, you're going to see a total that is in the 50s because you have Mahomes versus Herbert.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit large, and we saw it even against Jacksonville. Jacksonville's defense stinks, but the Chiefs scored a bunch of points early, then completely drained the entire clock in the fourth quarter. It's what they do. So I think that you might see this game potentially go over in the first half. But if the Chiefs open up a lead of any kind, they will go on their classic 5-minute, 35-yard drive to just drain the entire clock. And I'll be on the under for that. So give me the under 51, 51 and a half. And the number's a little bit high.
All right. And what do you got for your dog?
So for my dog, it's a bit tricky because I really don't like many dogs on the card. I mentioned Dallas. I actually don't think I like any dogs on the card. This is awkward. Let me see what I can actually pull up here. You know what?
Pull that up, and then I'll give my lock in the meantime.
Well, I was gonna say I don't even know what player props I have to even use at the moment. So, You know what? Am I really gonna do this because I don't have any other options here? Do I make a case?
I was gonna go for my dog. I was gonna go alt line with the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
I see a -3 at +110. I mean, it's not the biggest dog in the world. It's a little puppy dog, but I think that there's a world where they do win by, I think, more than 3 points. So I don't know if you want to take it up to a -6 even. I think that's possibly a possibility, but I'll give out -3 +110 for the Dallas Cowboys this week against the Minnesota Vikings. That's my dog. I don't know if you want to piggyback off of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's any way I can get Cincinnati first half and full game at potentially plus something. I don't know if that actually exists or not. Do you see that available by any chance?
You're talking about first half and full game?
Yeah, for Cincinnati.
Let me see here. I know some of these books are really
some books have them,
drop.
some don't, but it's also Thursday, so I'm not sure what's exactly available.
Yeah, let's see. All right, so Cincinnati first half and let's see, first half. No, I don't see it yet. Let me try another screen here. No, that's all player props.
You know what? Okay, I'll call an audible.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with a prop here. I'm gonna go back to that Bengals Steelers game. I'm going to go with race to 25 points, neither at plus 110.
I like that. Yeah, that kind of just correlates with my lock because I'm just taking the under in this game, the 41, with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, this is going to be a really ugly game. I think that, points will be at a premium. We talked about it. Steelers offense has just not been very good at all this season. Najee Harris doesn't have much success at all against his Bengals defense as well. They got TJ Watt last week to the Steelers, so I think this is going to be one of those games where we see a 16-10, 16-9 type of final in this game. I think it's just going to be a really, really ugly classic AFC North battle between these two teams. So for my lock, I'll take the under 41 between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then as my dog, I'll take the Dallas Cowboys -3 at plus 110 as an alternate line. But no, yeah, you're right, Scott. Not a lot of dog love, at least for this afternoon slate for NFL Week 11.
Sharks mentioning that Bengals halftime, full-time is even money.
Okay.
I don't mind it. I think I actually prefer the race at 25 neither. Plus 110 I really like. It's November. It's in Heinz Field. You know that the Bengals can't block anybody. Chase is still out, and Pittsburgh's offense is the lost cause. Plus money at 25. I mean, that's a lot of key numbers there, especially in Pittsburgh during this time of the overall calendar. I mean, 24 you're safe, 23 you're safe, 20 you're safe. Pittsburgh's not going to get past 20. No. So I'm really worried about Cincinnati only. Yeah, I'm just going to go with race at 25 neither.
All right, there it is. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of NFL Week 11 afternoon betting preview. Scott, anything else you want to get off your chest before we get out of here, buddy?
No, not really. You can find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Besides that, still doing Of course, the NFL show 3 times a week, doing the NBA show. I'll be back on that one tomorrow with Terrell. So check me out there, either in podcast form or on YouTube, of course. So, same thing with the NFL podcast. Make sure you jump into the comment section because believe it or not, we might ignore them, but we read them. So if you have a good comment, we'll throw it out there. But either way, definitely fun to break down the NFL, fun to break down the NBA and tennis. I'll be having a show later on tonight with Stone Labano. It's over there at ESPN, so it should be fun.
Nice.
But either way, a lot of sports going on, a lot of money being made. So let's make it.
Yep, we'll be back next week as usual for the NFL Gambling Podcast. And like Scott mentioned, check us out on the NBA Gambling Podcast as well, Monday through Friday, usually around the same time or within that 10 to 11 to 12 o'clock Eastern time window. We go live. And if you haven't already, make sure to follow the NFL Gambling Podcast account at SGPN NFL and make sure to subscribe to the NFL Gambling Podcast YouTube channel. You'll know when we go live and trying to get you through the day as we're trying to do with Jake. Jake, I'll try to get something maybe in the next 2 hours, but I know CJ is going to be recording his podcast, I think in an hour or so. So maybe look out for CJ and Bottom Line Bombs for NFL Week 11 as he goes through the contest picks. All right, good luck with your picks. Let's break these books off and let it ride.